We are only a couple weeks away from the premiere of Blood of My Blood, the Outlander prequel series, so let's talk about some of our favorite Outlander characters and how they might be portrayed as the younger versions of themselves in this show. This video will be about Murtagh Fitzgibbons Fraser, so if you are looking to avoid spoilers from the books or the TV show, please do keep on scrolling. Murtagh is one of the fan favorites of Outlander and the main series, and so I have no doubt in my mind that he will become a favorite in Blood of My Blood in the prequel. And there's a lot about Murtagh to digest here because there's obviously Murtagh as he's portrayed in the books, Murtagh as he's portrayed in the main series, and then how they're going to kind of blend those two portrayals and shape his younger version of himself in this prequel. Now, Murtagh's age at this point is sort of unknown, but I'm going to assume he's roughly the same age as Brian, so around 23. And he is described in the books as being very short, almost like rat-like facial features, very unattractive, for lack of a better word, and clearly we're seeing a very different portrayal of him in the shows. He's also described as looking very like grungy or dirty all the time, at least per Claire's descriptions of him, and I don't see them leaning into that in the prequel at all, and they definitely did in the earlier seasons of Outlander, but then in the later ones where he is in America, I think we just get a very different version of Murtagh because of how fans reacted to his character. He's often described in the books as being sort of cynical, and like many men of the time, he has a not always positive connotation with women, and it's likely because of his own experiences with him. And we see that in earlier seasons of Outlander when he is trying to teach Jamie the ways of having a wife. But the clips from the preview series here make it seem like he's very popular, very well liked, and is definitely a different version of the book version of Murtagh. I would say that he seems to have the same loyalty and protective qualities as book Murtagh, but is much more of a personable character who is well liked and popular. He's obviously not portrayed as an unattractive person. He seems very put together in this version of the show. But we have the added layer of how Murtagh is portrayed beyond Culloden, because in the books he does not live past Culloden. We lose Murtagh at the Battle of Culloden, and the show decided to keep him alive and have him go to America after Culloden. And so because of that storyline change in the show, in the main series, we had this written in, added kind of romance develop between him and Jocasta Cameron, which means that now this prequel kind of gets to lay the foundations of that love story with the two of these characters on screen. And we've seen how they're kind of playing that up with the kind of teaser about Jocasta's character, and again here with Murtagh's character. Around the time that this series is taking place, which is supposed to be 1715 or so, Murtagh had gone back to Castle Leoch to try and ask Ellen for her hand, and we know that Ellen was kind of his crush of the time, but the crush of many men around Castle Leoch. And we can tell, obviously, from this clip and other clips that Jocasta definitely felt the weight of that as her younger sibling. During this return to Castle Leoch, we have the story that is mentioned both in the show and again in the books, where Murtagh ends up taking place in the hunt and killing a boar with his dagger. And to reward him for that, Colum gifts him the tusks of the boar that he kills, which he has turned into bracelets that he later then gifts to Ellen MacKenzie. Now we know from the main series of Outlander that Claire pieces together that those tusks that were gifted to Ellen MacKenzie from an admirer were actually from Murtagh, and that he was the admirer, and they have kind of a realization together when she figures out that Murtagh actually was very much in love with Jamie's mother. And he gave those to Ellen despite her choosing to marry his close friend Brian Fraser. There's also a clip in the trailer where we can kind of infer that Murtagh follows Brian and Ellen when they both leave the castle, and he catches them outside of castle walls, kind of at the early stages of their relationship, and he seems disappointed in that. And I think we're definitely going to get that viewpoint of Murtagh going through this heartbreak of not being the man that Ellen chooses and how he reconciles with that. You know, we also are getting a lot of these kind of, I would almost argue like player or not, you know, not a gentleman kind of comments from This Is the Young Mrs. Fitz in the trailer here. So I would assume that as Murtagh grows up, this kind of feeling that he wasn't worthy of her largely informs how he approaches any relationship moving forward. I think when you're in your early 20s and you have an experience like this, it can sometimes be such a gut punch to your ego that it affects how you move through the world. And I feel like Murtagh's a great character to kind of assign that trope to. But we also know, just through, again, the source material and the show, that he was very close to Ellen even after her and Brian were married. So much so that when she delivers Jamie, he was there within a week of him being born, and he swore to her that he would protect Jamie for the rest of his life and walk side by side with him and offer him his protection. And so I do see, probably at some point in the show, them portraying that scene. And I hope that we get it, where Jamie is born and Murtagh kind of pledges that loyalty to Ellen. And I think that's going to be a really touching moment for us to see, especially since we know how loyal Murtagh was with Jamie throughout his life. In the books, obviously, it goes up until Culloden, where he loses his life, but then in the show, they have all this added time that they were given because of that rewrite. And so I think that getting to watch that moment on screen would be really special. All in all, I'm excited to see how charismatic and personable they make him. I think he's kind of like the levity for a lot of these heavier stories. He's got a sense of humor, and he always did in the main series, so I hope that that's a through line that they maintain with the younger version of him. And I am expecting lots of laughs, probably a lot of heartfelt moments with him, and definitely an interesting take on him and Jocasta that is going to be brand new because it's not taken from any source material, and it's expanding upon what they built in the later seasons of Outlander.